I was looking for my birth certificate in my parents' filing cabinet when I found the loan document. My signature was on it, co-signing my sister's business for $190,000. But I never signed it. My father did. The business had already failed. The collectors were calling my number, and I didn't confront my dad. I went straight to a lawyer. What she uncovered was worse than the loan. This is my story, but statistically, it's far from unique. Family members are the perpetrators in over a quarter of all identity fraud cases. For me, it was a $190,000 lie that threatened to bury my future. But the real question wasn't about the money. It was why my father would do it, and what else he had done. To understand that, you have to understand our family and the role I was always meant to play. From the outside, we were the picture of a stable, middle-class family. A nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, annual vacations. But inside, there was a hierarchy written in invisible ink. My younger sister, Chloe, was the star. The one with big dreams, big emotions, and an endless need for support. And I was the foundation. The reliable one. The one who figured it out. This wasn't about love. Not exactly. It was about investment. My father poured resources into Chloe like she was a startup with unicorn potential. Dance lessons, private tutors, a brand new car for her 16th birthday. When she decided at 22 that she wanted to launch a high-end candle and home fragrance boutique, it was treated as a family mission. Mood boards covered our kitchen island. My parents talked about her vision with a reverence usually reserved for TED Talk speakers. My role was different. I got responsibility. By the time I was 16, my father had me managing our household utility bills online, explaining it was to teach me real-world skills. At 18, he added me as an authorized user on a credit card for emergencies, but the card stayed in his desk. He said it was to help build my credit, and I believed him. I was the kid with the after-school job, the one who paid for my own phone bill, the one who took out student loans for college, while my parents co-signed for Chloe's apartment lease. The pattern was so consistent it felt like natural law. Chloe dreamed and our family funded. I planned and our family advised. They'd say things like, "You're so much more financially literate than your sister," or "We never have to worry about you." It was framed as praise, but it came with a quiet transfer of risk. Their trust wasn't emotional. It was functional. They trusted me to handle things, to be the adult, so they could focus their energy and their money on her potential. The boutique idea, Chloe's Haven, became all-consuming. My father, a mid-level finance manager, talked about it at every family dinner. He'd found a niche, he said. The markup on luxury candles was astronomical. This was their ticket. But banks, it turned out, weren't as captivated by the vision. My parents' credit was good, not great. The initial business loan applications came back with offers for much smaller amounts than they needed, or with interest rates that made my father scoff. That's when the suggestions started, always casually dropped over a meal. "Your credit is spotless, you know," my father said to me one night. "All those little bills you managed perfectly. Lenders love that history." He talked about how being a co-signer was just a formality, a way to get better terms. It wouldn't cost me a thing. Chloe was a sure bet. It was family helping family. I said no. The first time I was polite. I was 24, finally building my own career in graphic design. I had my own apartment, my own debts I was carefully chipping away at. Co-signing a 6-figure business loan felt like strapping a cannonball to my future. My refusal was met with a chilly, disappointed silence. Then the pressure shifted. My mother called, her voice laced with anxious guilt. "Your sister is so stressed. This is everything to her. Don't you believe in her?" Chloe herself sent me tearful texts about how everyone else doubted her, but she thought I was different. I held the line. For months, I became the family obstacle. Conversations grew shorter. Invitations to Sunday dinners became sporadic. I was no longer the reliable one, I was the selfish one. The one withholding the key to my sister's dream. Then about 8 months ago, the tension suddenly evaporated. My father called, his tone buoyant. "Good news," he said. "We got the loan, a local credit union, fantastic rate. We didn't even need a cosigner after all. They just saw the strength of the business plan." I was so relieved I didn't question it. The family warmth returned. They sent me pictures of the boutique's build-out. I was happy for them and happy to be back in their good graces. That was the lie. And I believed it because it fit the story I'd been told my whole life. I was the responsible one, but Chloe was the one who got what she needed. The first call from a collections agency came on a Tuesday morning. I almost deleted it as spam. But then another came, and another. They were asking for me regarding a delinquent business account. I told them they had the wrong person, but they had my social security number. They had my date of birth. They had my current address. A cold dread started to pool in my stomach. I pushed it down. It had to be a mistake, a crossed wire in some database. Then the formal letter arrived from the credit union. Notice of default. My name was listed as a co-borrower. The amount, $190,000. The payment was 90 days past due. My mind went blank, then raced. This was the loan, the one they said they got without me. I drove to my parents' house that weekend, my heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself there was an explanation, a horrible clerical error. I found my father in his home office. I put the letter on his desk. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "I was going to tell you," he said. "We were going to get it sorted before you found out." The confession was chilling in its simplicity. The bank had required a cosigner. My signature was needed, so he had signed it. He'd practiced my signature, he said, from a scan of my driver's license he had on file. "It's just a signature," he said, waving a hand. "A technicality. The business just had a slow start. Chloe's going to turn it around. You won't be on the hook for a penny." But the business wasn't having a slow start. It had already closed. The boutique's Instagram hadn't been updated in months. The landlord had sued for broken lease terms. I learned all this in the following frantic 48 hours. The loan wasn't just in default, it was a smoking crater, and my name was etched on the side. I stood in my childhood home, looking at my father, this man who taught me to balance a checkbook and now stood accused of stealing my financial identity. The person I was supposed to trust most had calculated the risk of betraying me and found it acceptable. In that moment, every lesson about family, about trust, about being the reliable one, shattered. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I turned and walked out. I drove straight to the office of a lawyer who specialized in fraud and contract law. I handed her the loan documents, and I asked her the only question that mattered anymore. What do I do now? What she told me next would unravel more than just a forged signature. It would expose a financial web I never knew I was trapped in, and reveal that the $190,000 loan was only the first and smallest lie. My lawyer, a woman named Evelyn Ross with the calm demeanor of a bomb disposal expert, listened without interrupting. Then she took the documents, put on her reading glasses, and said, "Okay, first, we stop talking to the bank. Every word you say can be used to imply you accepted this debt. Second, we pull every financial record with your name on it, going back 10 years. That second part confused me. "Just to fight the loan, right?" I asked. Evelyn looked at me over her glasses. "No, to see what else we're fighting." She explained it wasn't just about a forged signature. Under the law, this was identity theft, a felony. But proving it, and more importantly, untangling myself, required treating my financial life like a crime scene. We had to assume nothing was as it seemed. Her first move was to help me file an official identity theft report with the police. Sitting in a sterile precinct interview room, dictating my father's name and date of birth to a uniformed officer was the most surreal and devastating hour of my life. The officer was kind but blunt. "It's usually a family member," he said, not looking up from his form. "We see it all the time." With the police report in hand, Evelyn launched a three-pronged attack. She sent a certified, legally worded cease and desist letter to the credit union, stating the loan was fraudulent, that I was a victim of identity theft, and that all collection efforts must stop immediately. Then, we requested a full audit of the loan application file. Finally, she ordered what she called a forensic credit pull. Not just the standard report consumers see, but the raw data from all three bureaus that banks see when they make lending decisions. While we waited, the silence from my family was absolute. No calls, no texts. It was as if I had ceased to exist the moment I walked out with that letter. The only communication was a single, terse email from my father a week later. "We can fix this as a family. Involving lawyers and police is an overreaction that will only hurt everyone. Call me." I didn't reply. Evelyn had warned me not to. The credit union's response arrived first. It was a form letter acknowledging my dispute. Enclosed was a copy of the signed loan application. Seeing the forgery in crisp black and white was a physical blow. The signature was a decent approximation of mine, but it was off. The slant was wrong. The loop in my Y was too tight. In the margin, my father had listed himself as a personal reference, his own phone number. Below my forged signature, in his unmistakable handwriting, was his own genuine signature as a guarantor. But tucked behind the application was the real shock: the bank's internal notes. A loan officer had scribbled, "Applicant's credit strong 785, cosigner's credit supplemental, strong familial tie father-daughter, low risk." They hadn't just accepted the signature, they'd seen my father's involvement as a positive. The system had worked exactly as my father had gambled it would. My good credit, built meticulously since I was 18, had been the key that unlocked the vault. And he had stolen the key. Evelyn was unfazed. "This is good," she said. "It shows they didn't do due diligence. They should have called the number on the application your number to verify. They didn't. That's a procedural failure on their part." She said we could use that, but her expression changed when the forensic credit report arrived. It was over 60 pages long. Evelyn spread it out on her massive conference table. The first pages were what I expected. My student loans, my car payment, my 2 credit cards I'd opened myself, all in good standing. Then she flipped further. "These are the trade lines," she said, her finger tracing down a column of financial data. "Every account that reports under your social security number." Her finger stopped halfway down the page. "Do you recognize this account?" I looked at the line. A store credit card from a high-end home goods retailer. Opened 3 years ago. Limit, $5,000. Balance, $4,822. Maxed out, then closed for non-payment. "No," I said, my throat tight. "Never." She moved her finger down. Another retail card. A furniture store. Opened 2 years ago. $2,000 limit. Charged to $1,900, then sent to collections. "This one." I shook my head, a cold nausea rising. Down the list she went. Not 1 or 2, but 7 separate credit accounts. Store cards, a line of credit from a local bank, even a charged-off cell phone account. All opened over the past 4 to 5 years. All maxed out or nearly maxed out. All delinquent or in collections. The total, not including the business loan, was just over $34,000. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "This is a mistake," I whispered. "This has to be someone else, a mix-up." Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "It's your social, your date of birth, the addresses on these accounts," she pointed. "This one is your parents' house. This one is your old apartment from college. This one is a P.O. box I'd guess you've never seen." She paused. "When you were added as an authorized user on your father's credit card at 18, what did you do with the card?" "It stayed in his desk," I said, the memory now horribly tainted. "He said it was for my credit history." "He likely made you a joint account holder, not just an authorized user," Evelyn explained. "That gives him full legal access to your credit file. It's like giving him a master key. He could use your established history to open new accounts. And based on this," she tapped the damning paper, "he did, for years." The forgery on the business loan wasn't the first crime. It was the latest and most brazen in a long, quiet campaign. He hadn't just needed my signature for one big score. He'd been using my financial identity as a stealth fund for years, likely to supplement his income, to buy things my mother wouldn't question, or to cover gaps created by pouring money into Chloe's life. My good name wasn't just co-signing a loan. It had been bled dry, piece by piece, in the shadows. The emotional betrayal was one thing. This was a quantitative annihilation. My 785 credit score was a fiction. The real number, weighed down by these hidden debts, was in the low 500s. I was not a promising young professional. To any bank, I was a high-risk ghost with a trail of financial wreckage. "But the collectors," I stammered. "I never got calls for these, never got letters." "Where did all your mail go before you moved out at 22? Evelyn asked. "My parents' house," I said, the answer hitting me with the force of a truck. The bills, the overdue notices, the final demands, they all went there. And my father, the man who managed the household bills, had intercepted every single one. He had built a wall of paper between his actions and my awareness. Evelyn's next question was surgical. When you filed taxes, did you ever do them yourself, or did your father help? He always did them, I said, a new, deeper dread taking root. He's an accountant by training. He said it was easier, that he could get me the best return. She leaned back in her chair, a grave look on her face. We need your tax transcripts from the IRS, immediately. While I signed forms authorizing her to request my official tax records, Evelyn outlined the new battlefield. The $190,000 loan was now a secondary front. The primary war was over the 7 fraudulent accounts, the shattered credit, and the potential for even more damage we couldn't yet see. The strategy had to change. We couldn't just dispute one loan. We had to systematically challenge every fraudulent account with each credit bureau, a process that could take months. We would need to send the police report to dozens of different collection agencies and original creditors. And we had to be prepared for the possibility that the credit union, to avoid liability, might decide to pursue criminal charges against the forger, my father. The weight of it was paralyzing. Cleaning this up would be a full-time job. It would cost thousands in legal fees. It would require me to relive the betrayal with every form I filled out, every phone call I made to a skeptical creditor. My future, my ability to rent an apartment, buy a car, get a mortgage, was hostage to my own father's secret life. I left Evelyn's office that day with a stack of paperwork and a hollow feeling. The person I was 24 hours ago was gone. I drove home, but didn't go inside. I sat in my car and stared at my phone. I had the police report. I had the evidence. The logical next step, the step Evelyn had gently prepared me for, was to confront him with the ultimatum only a lawyer can deliver. Admit everything, sign affidavits of fraud for each account, and work with us to clean it up, or face the legal consequences alone. I scrolled to his number. My thumb hovered over the call button. This was the moment to shift from being a victim to being a plaintiff, to use the law as my leverage. But as I looked at the familiar contact name, Dad, a different, more terrifying question surfaced, one Evelyn's tax question had planted. If he had lied this deeply, for this long, about my financial life, what else had he done? What was on those tax returns he filed for me? What else didn't I know? I put the phone down. The confrontation would have to wait, because before I could face him, I needed to know the full truth, no matter how bad it was. And what I would discover in the following week would make the forged loan and the secret credit cards look like a simple misunderstanding. The tax transcripts from the IRS arrived in a plain, terrifying envelope. I opened it with Evelyn in her office. The first page was standard, but the second page contained a line that made the $34,000 in secret credit card debt feel like a parking ticket. Under income, listed for the past 3 tax years, was revenue from a sole proprietorship, a business named Haven Creative. The income wasn't huge, $22,000 one year, $18,000 the next, but it was consistent. And I had never owned a business. I had never heard of Haven Creative. Evelyn pointed a steady finger at the listed business activity. Consulting services. Then she pointed to the corresponding business expenses section. Thousands of dollars in write-offs, home office deductions, mileage, equipment purchases, even meals and entertainment. This is a phantom business, she said, her voice low. He created a Schedule C in your name. He reported fake income to make your financial profile look more robust to lenders, and then he wrote off personal expenses, likely things he bought for himself or your sister, to reduce his own tax liability. Or worse, to generate fraudulent refunds. The air left the room. This wasn't just stealing my credit. This was impersonating me to the federal government. Tax fraud. A federal crime. The forged loan application had used this fabricated business income as proof of my financial stability. My father hadn't just taken my signature. He had built an entire fictional version of me, a ghost employee with a ghost business, to exploit the system more effectively. He filed these, I whispered, stating the obvious because my brain couldn't process the implications. He signed my name on my tax returns. Worse, Evelyn corrected. He likely filed them electronically using a PIN he set up for you. That's identity theft at the federal level. The IRS doesn't ask for a wet signature. They just ask for the right numbers, and he had all your numbers. The next discovery was even more insidious. Evelyn cross-referenced the business expenses with the fraudulent credit card accounts. A $1,200 charge for a new laptop on one of the store cards matched a computer equipment write-off on the Schedule C. A $900 charge at a high-end restaurant matched a client entertainment deduction. He wasn't just spending my credit. He was using my stolen identity to make the spending tax-deductible, effectively getting a discount on his theft funded by the U.S. Treasury. The total financial footprint of the fraud was now staggering. The $190,000 loan, the $34,000 in fraudulent consumer debt, and now an undetermined amount of tax fraud that could trigger audits, penalties, and criminal investigation from the IRS. My identity wasn't just compromised. It had been weaponized into a full-service financial crime syndicate with one member, my father. Evelyn scheduled a call with a tax attorney she trusted. His advice was grim. I would have to file amended tax returns for all 3 years, declaring zero income from the fake business and removing the fraudulent deductions. This would likely trigger an audit. I would need to prove I hadn't earned that money or spent it. The burden of proof was on me. And the IRS, he warned, is not a sympathetic institution. They would want their money back, with interest and penalties, even if I was the victim. The process could take years and cost tens of thousands in legal and accounting fees. I felt the walls closing in. The problem was no longer just my father or a bank. It was a labyrinth of institutions, credit bureaus, collection agencies, state courts, and now the federal government, all of which saw me, not him, as the responsible party. The scale of the cleanup felt impossible. It was in this state of shell-shocked overwhelm that my phone finally rang. It was my mother. Her voice was strained, a performance of calm. "We need to talk. As a family, your father has explained everything. There have been some misunderstandings. Can you come over tonight?" Without the lawyer. Evelyn advised against it. "Anything you say can be used. Anything you agree to can be construed as accepting responsibility." But I was tired of being a file in a cabinet. I needed to look him in the eye. I agreed to meet, but on one condition: I would record the conversation. It was legal in my state. Evelyn reluctantly agreed, provided I said nothing substantive. My job was to listen. Walking into my parents' house that night felt like entering a staged set. The lights were soft. My mother had made coffee. My father sat in his armchair, the picture of weary patriarch. Chloe was there too, her arms crossed, glaring at me from the sofa. My father began. He didn't deny the forgery. He framed it as a shortcut, a necessary step to secure Chloe's future when the banks were being unreasonable. He called the other accounts a borrowing strategy. He said he'd always intended to pay them off, that he was using my good credit to leverage opportunities for the family, and that the benefits would have trickled down to me. He presented it as a flawed but well-intentioned financial masterplan. Then he pivoted to the guilt. "Involving the police, that's what you do to criminals, to strangers. I'm your father. You're destroying this family over money." My mother chimed in, tears in her eyes. "He made mistakes, but he's not a bad person. He was trying to provide. Can't you see that? We can pay this back together, as a family." But then Chloe spoke, her voice cold with fury. "You're so selfish. You have no idea the pressure he was under. You got to go off and build your perfect little life while we were here struggling. He used your credit because you weren't using it. And now you want to put him in jail for trying to keep us afloat." Her words reframed the entire narrative in their minds. I wasn't the victim of a crime. I was the vindictive heir, punishing my father for his struggles, withholding resources from the family coffers. My independence was recast as abandonment. My good credit was an idle asset they were entitled to use. My father then presented his solution. He would take out a second mortgage on the house to pay off the business loan and the credit cards. In return, I would drop the police report, instruct my lawyer to stand down, and sign a family agreement to repay him the amount over time. It was a total inversion of reality. I would go from being his victim to being his debtor. The fraud would be erased from the official record, but the power dynamic, him in control, me in obligation, would be cemented forever. I looked at their faces, etched with expectation. They genuinely believed this was a fair and generous offer. They were waiting for me to see reason, to come back to the fold, to stop making things difficult. In that moment, I understood the true depth of the betrayal. It wasn't just the money. It was the fundamental inability to see me as a separate person with rights. I was an extension of them, a utility, and utilities don't get to sue. I didn't argue. I didn't present my evidence. I simply said, "I have to go." My father's face hardened. "If you walk out that door, you are choosing to tear this family apart. You will be responsible for the consequences." I walked out. The recording on my phone had captured everything. The admission of the forgery, the justification of the borrowing strategy, the emotional blackmail, the threat. It was no longer a case of he said, she said. It was a confession. The next morning, I played the recording for Evelyn. She listened, her expression unreadable. When it finished, she said, "This changes the strategy. We have two paths. The hard path. We give this to the police as evidence, push for felony identity theft and forgery charges, and fight the IRS battle with a clear victim narrative. It will be a public, brutal war. Your family will likely disown you. Or the harder path. We use this as leverage for a global settlement. We demand he signs a notarized confession for every account, agrees to pay every debt in full, and cooperates with cleaning up the tax fraud. We hold the criminal charges as a stick, but we might not have to use it if he complies." She looked at me. "The choice is yours, but you need to understand if we go to the authorities with this tape, it moves out of your hands. The state will decide whether to prosecute. There will be no taking it back." I thought of my father's threat, of Chloe's anger, of my mother's tears. I thought of the years of being the reliable one, the foundation. Then I thought of the phantom business, the maxed-out cards, the loan officer's notes, the looming IRS audit. I thought of my future, buried under a mountain of his lies. I made my decision. It wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. To reclaim my name, my future, I had to be willing to let the image of the family I thought I had shatter completely. I told Evelyn to prepare the paperwork for the global settlement. It was an ultimatum. He would confess, in writing, to everything. He would take full financial responsibility, or we would go to the district attorney with the tape and the police report. We sent the package by certified mail. The clock was ticking, and his response wouldn't just determine my financial future. It would define what was left of our family. But what we didn't know was that my father had been hiding one final, catastrophic secret. A secret that would make all the fraud look like a prelude. And his reaction to our ultimatum was about to bring the entire house of cards crashing down on all of us. The deadline on our ultimatum passed in silence. No signed confession arrived. No lawyer called, just an empty mailbox and a growing sense of dread. Then, on the morning of the 5th day, my phone rang. It wasn't my father. It was a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit. "We need you to come down to the station," he said. "There have been developments in your identity theft case." My first insane thought was that my father had turned himself in. But when I arrived with Evelyn, the detective's demeanor told a different story. He was grave, almost pitying. He explained that after receiving my police report, they had opened a standard investigation. As part of that, they had pulled my father's financial records, and what they found didn't just point to fraud against me. "It appears your father has been operating a Ponzi-like scheme," the detective said, the words landing like physical blows. "He's been soliciting investment loans from friends, colleagues, even distant relatives for years, promising high returns on business ventures that never existed. Your sister's boutique was one of them. The $190,000 loan wasn't just for the business. A significant portion was used to make interest payments to earlier investors to keep the illusion alive." The room seemed to shrink. The forged loan, the secret credit cards, the fake business, they weren't just acts of desperation to fund my sister's dream or cover household bills. They were frantic, criminal moves to fuel a collapsing pyramid. My good credit had been the latest lifeline thrown into a sinking ship. The detective believed my father had been using my identity not just for spending, but to create a false front of solvency, to show potential investors that his family business had strong, diverse revenue streams. "The final secret," Evelyn murmured, piecing it together. "He wasn't just stealing from you, he was using you to steal from everyone else." The detective confirmed they were bringing my father in for questioning that afternoon. He asked if I was willing to provide a formal, videotaped statement incorporating the recording from the family meeting. I looked at Evelyn. She gave a single, solemn nod. This was no longer a private family dispute. It was a public felony case with multiple victims. My cooperation wasn't just advisable, it was a moral necessity. I gave the statement. It took 3 hours. I described the discovery of the loan, the forensic credit report, the tax fraud, and played the recording of my father's confession and threat. By the end, I was exhausted, hollowed out. The detective thanked me. "You're not the only one," he said quietly. "We've already spoken to 2 of his coworkers who gave him $50,000 for a real estate flip that never happened." The following weeks were a blur of grim headlines and legal processes. My father was arrested and charged with multiple counts of grand larceny, identity theft, forgery, and securities fraud. His picture was in the local paper. The story of the finance manager who fleeced his own daughter and his friends was a juicy scandal. My mother, in a state of shock, initially stood by him, telling reporters it was a terrible misunderstanding. But as the evidence mounted and more victims came forward, her public support vanished. She filed for divorce. Chloe, her boutique dream exposed as a fraudulent front, retreated from public view entirely. She never contacted me. The family was atomized. In the midst of this chaos, the legal and financial cleanup became my full-time job. With the criminal case proceeding, the civil liabilities started to untangle. The credit union, facing pressure from both my lawyer and the district attorney's office, agreed to fully discharge the $190,000 loan, recognizing it as procured through felony fraud. They removed it from my credit report. The 7 fraudulent credit accounts were harder. We had to dispute each one individually with the 3 major credit bureaus, submitting the police report, the indictment documents, and affidavits. It was a tedious, months-long battle of paperwork. 3 of the creditors folded immediately. 4 fought, demanding more proof. We sent them copies of the forged signatures compared to my real ones. One by one, they capitulated. After 6 months, the last account was removed. The phantom business on my tax returns required filing amended returns with a statement of victim of identity theft attached to each. The IRS, to my shock, was efficient. They accepted the documentation and cleared the fraudulent income. No audit was triggered. The cost was astronomical. My legal fees with Evelyn approached $40,000. The tax attorney cost another $10,000. I paid it from my savings and took on extra freelance work. It was the price of my name. Emotionally, I cycled through stages of grief for a family that I now understood had never truly existed. The anger was ferocious, then it burned down to embers. The sadness was a deep, quiet pool, but underneath it all was a strange, solid sense of clarity. The fog of guilt and obligation had lifted. The narrative they had built around me, the reliable one, the independent one, the one who didn't need, was exposed as a convenient fiction to enable their exploitation. I was not responsible for his crimes, for her complicity, or for their collapse. A year after my arrest, my father pleaded guilty to a reduced set of charges to avoid a trial. He was sentenced to 5 to 7 years in state prison. He was also ordered to pay restitution to all his victims, a sum totaling over $600,000. I was included in that restitution order, but I knew I would likely never see a dime. The final surprising detail came from the divorce proceedings. My mother's lawyer, while untangling their marital assets, discovered a second life insurance policy my father had taken out years ago. The beneficiary wasn't my mother, or my sister, or me. It was a woman none of us had ever heard of, with an address in another state. The detective, following the thread, discovered she was another early investor he had been romantically involved with for over a decade. The fraud wasn't just financial. The entire structure of his life was a lie. My mother's devastation was complete. In the end, I got my name back. My credit score, after 2 years of diligent work, settled in the high 700s. The IRS closed its case. The collection calls stopped forever, but I lost my family. Not just the dysfunctional one, but the very idea of one. Holidays are quiet. I don't have an emergency contact listed at my doctor's office. Yet I am not broken. The independence they forced upon me became my salvation. The resilience they took for granted became my armor. I learned a brutal lesson. Trust is not a default setting to be granted by blood. It is a currency earned by consistent action. And sometimes, the most family-like behavior comes from strangers, from a meticulous lawyer, from a by-the-book detective, from friends who showed up with food and no questions asked. My story is extreme, but its core isn't rare. According to the Federal Trade Commission, reports of identity theft by family members have been steadily rising for years. It preys on trust, on the unwillingness to believe a parent could see you as a resource to be drained. If you take one thing from this, let it be this. You are not an extension of your family's balance sheet. Your identity, your credit, your future are yours alone. Guard them, even from those who claim to love you most. Because love doesn't forge signatures. Love doesn't build secret debts. Love doesn't look at a child and see a line of credit. I started this story in a filing cabinet, looking for proof of my birth. I ended it in a courtroom, watching a man who shared my DNA be led away in handcuffs. In between, I found out who I really was. Not a daughter, not a victim, but a person who could survive the unthinkable and walk out the other side free. So what do you do with a story like this? You can't unhear it. You can't unknow that the people who are supposed to protect you can sometimes be the greatest threat to the life you're trying to build. This wasn't just a family drama. It was a masterclass in how trust can be weaponized, and how the systems we rely on, banks, credit bureaus, even the tax code, can be turned against us by someone with intimate access and zero remorse. The statistics are chilling, but they're just numbers until you recognize the pattern in your own life. That offhand comment about your good credit, that pressure to co-sign, that offer to handle your taxes because it's easier. These aren't always red flags, but they can be the first threads of a web. My advice isn't to distrust your family. It's to trust your own instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Your unease is data. Your discomfort is a boundary trying to form. For anyone listening who sees a shadow of this in their own world, the steps are clear, even if they're hard. Get your own credit report from annualcreditreport.com and read every line. File your own taxes. Keep your financial documents secure, even from those you love. If you find a discrepancy, don't explain it away. Investigate it. And if you need to, seek legal counsel before you seek a family meeting. A lawyer isn't an act of war. It's an act of self-defense. The road back from financial betrayal is long and lonely. It's filled with paperwork and painful conversations and the quiet grief of a relationship that can never be the same. But on the other side, there is a profound kind of freedom. The freedom of knowing what you're made of. The freedom of a credit report that tells the truth. The freedom of a life built on your own terms, with locks on the doors you choose. This story traveled from a filing cabinet to a prison cell. It redefined everything I thought I knew about family, love, and security. But it also gave me the one thing my father's forgery could never take: my own voice, the power to say no, the courage to walk away, the strength to rebuild from the ground up. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt the quiet shift from being a daughter to being a line item on someone else's balance sheet, you're not alone. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Protect your peace. Guard your name. And remember, you are not responsible for the crimes committed in your name. Thank you for listening. This has been my story. For more real stories of resilience, remember to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.